Hello, School Transportation Nation. It's Tony Corpin and Ryan Gray with you this week. We're talking all about school transportation, everything coming out, new headlines. Got some big ones here this week to dive into. Guys, don't forget, this podcast is brought to you by TransFinder, the leader in school bus routing software. And Brian, I know we got STN Expo coming up in about 2 months. We've got the TSD conference down in Dallas, Frisco area in November we're working on right now. There's a lot of action at STN and trying to keep our fingers on the pulse of the industry. We got our June issue, which we're working on as well, get it out to the press. So what's happening over there in school transportation land?
Oh, quite a bit. Certainly the springtime, a lot has ramped up. Certainly we have everything going on in Washington, D.C. right now. Definitely, there was some good news that the U.S. and China reached at least a tentative or a 90-day deal on the tariffs. So that will certainly help a lot of the auto manufacturers and the school bus manufacturers, engine manufacturers, of course, battery electric. A lot of the details. Again, this is still a moving target, but positive news there, and the markets responded well to that. We see a lot of conversation also around Wi-Fi in school buses. You might remember, Tony, we have an article up a couple weeks ago. There's a movement afoot in Congress to really roll back some of the Biden administration era advancements in terms of wireless connectivity for students. So that was passed out of the FCC. On the school bus side, we know that school bus Wi-Fi is now E-rate eligible. In the Senate, they passed a resolution a couple weeks ago. The House has a similar resolution, not looking at school bus Wi-Fi, but other external mobile Wi-Fi devices that students take home. So a lot of school districts, all you out there in school transportation nation land, know that a lot of your districts are sending home other external devices with students that they can have at their homes. So they're either living in a rural area where they don't have reliable or any broadband internet, or their families can't afford it, so that they need that internet connectivity to do their homework, do their projects, and whatnot. The resolutions in Congress currently target that. So the Senate has approved removing that from E-rate, and the House, as I mentioned, has a similar resolution. We know also that the Supreme Court should be weighing in on the school bus Wi-Fi issue this spring in a matter of weeks. We would think. We had Noel Ellerson-Ng from AASA, the Superintendents Association, on earlier this year talking all about that. So we're awaiting that. But in the meantime, it's left schools kind of in a conundrum. So we know that school bus Wi-Fi is safe for now. The applications and all the paperwork process is already in the works for the coming school year. So even if tomorrow the Supreme Court rules on the Universal Services Fund is really what they're looking at, which funds E-rate. Even if tomorrow school bus Wi-Fi was pulled, the school districts would likely they're participating in an E-rate for school bus Wi-Fi would still have funding in place for next school year. After that, that's when things might get hairy. But as of today, when we're recording this, even with the House resolutions that are looking at external Wi-Fi hotspots, not school bus Wi-Fi, the programs are moving forward. But as I mentioned, school districts are looking ahead. They're trying to plan. I mean, we talk about it with battery electric school buses, with clean school bus program funding from the EPA, with a myriad number of topics. A lot of uncertainty obviously is bad for the markets. It's bad for student transportation leaders who are trying to plan for the coming school years, not just the coming school year. So they need to know what money they have available for their various programs. So we caught up with Des Moines Public Schools in Iowa. It was interesting because, of course, we just had NCST there, the National Congress on School Transportation. And Des Moines actually earlier this school year announced that they rolled out Wi-Fi on their entire fleet of school buses, or at least 126 of them. So that's quite a big project there, and they're utilizing E-rate. So we caught up with them and find out, hey, well, is this changing your plans any? And again, they're moving forward, but this is a $600,000 cost to them for the equipment, the installation, the wireless data service for these 126 school bus Wi-Fi hotspots. E-rate covered 90% of that. So the way E-rate works again is it covers anywhere from 20 to 90%, and it depends on a couple of criteria. Is the school district rural, and is it in a low economic or disadvantaged community? So Des Moines, they're getting the utmost there in terms of their discount. And they told us, they said, yes, certainly, we're needing to reconsider this. So hopefully it moves forward. But it's definitely something that we had planned for. And, if that funding goes away, then that could certainly create an issue. And it's interesting. I went to the USAC, which is the Universal Service Administrative Company, which the FCC created to kind of oversee a lot of the E-rate and the Universal Services Fund. And I asked them, I said, well, how many school bus Wi-Fi projects are out there? And they have a website. So I jumped into the data, and it's really interesting. There was about $63.6 million in E-rate discounts that I've found that were put out to school districts, awarded to school districts for the current school year. About 2,900 individual school bus Wi-Fi projects, give or take. I mean, not necessarily 2,900 school districts, probably several hundred. I haven't counted them all yet. But each of the applications are split. So you're talking about the equipment. You're talking about the installation. You're talking again about the wireless data service. And then there's other, which I haven't been able to crack that nut yet. But there's 2,900 line items. And again, school districts are listed multiple times. So that's still, Tony, you're talking about $63.6 million. That's not the $5 billion from the Clean School Bus Program that's still kind of up in the air. But still, that's a lot of money for school districts to rely upon for their technology. And you have your IT departments involved. And again, planning. Des Moines Public Schools told us that in addition to that $600,000 cost for the equipment and the installation and the wireless data services, they have an estimated cost of another $500,000 in subsequent years. And because, you're looking at the maintenance of those systems. Do you need to, you got to get new systems potentially, and then, again, go back out to E-rate and apply. So it's a lot of money there to be leaving on the table, Tony, and certainly something looking to have further discussions at this summer at STN Expo West in Reno, Nevada.
Yeah, I find it very interesting. I mean, you touched on a couple topics there, right? We got the Wi-Fi topic and we almost have the tariff topic, right? So two different kind of compartments there. But I think, from a Wi-Fi perspective, obviously that's hot and heavy during COVID. And, I don't know if the appetite for that is kind of dropped off or not. Just the question becomes, do you, as a school district, and if you don't have Wi-Fi on your buses, should you be putting it on? Because I think we take for granted that the funding is going to be there in perpetuity, and clearly it's not. And people kind of hem and haw on making decisions on this sort of stuff. And here we are, the Senate and the House are putting through bills to take funding away. We have Clean School Bus, which we thought was going to be $5 billion, which might not end up being that because it might get, basically pulled back by the federal government. Now the states continue to kind of flow money, but I think that the bigger tale here is that as a school transportation operation, you can't really afford to just wait and twiddle your thumbs on this stuff because the money is going to be gone or reappropriated into other things. And I think we continually see this is that, oh, I'm thinking about it, or, oh, I don't know if I want to do it. Well, the door's going to close and you won't even have the opportunity. So I think that this is a real kind of lesson for the industry to kind of think about hard is that should I be considering taking advantage of this funding, whatever it's for, if it's Wi-Fi or clean energy, school buses, whatever it is, why am I not engaging on this? Is it simply because I'm too busy and I don't have time for it? Or is there not simply a need for the technology? I mean, if someone's giving you the free sample, I guess if you don't like it, then you just don't eat it, right? But at the same time, people call it free money, right? I think that no matter what, nothing's really free. There's work attached or there's strings attached. And as you said, Wi-Fi is a reimbursement. It's not just, hey, I want free stuff. This is an unrealistic expectation. So when you look at this opportunities, guys, out in the nation, really think about it and say, hey, is this the right solution? Could this help my students? We always talk about student success. It's great to say you got to talk the talk, but you got to walk the walk too, right? That's where we always talk about school bus as an extension of the classroom. Well, here's an opportunity to make it, but a huge percentage of the industry doesn't believe in it. Or they may say they believe in it, but they're not actually doing anything to actually, extend that kind of olive branch to the children to provide that technology.
Yeah, and I think that you hit a great point where it's meeting the needs of the district. We hear that all the time, whether it's fuels or different technology. What's the use case in the school district? And I've talked with a lot of folks that say they're just not interested in Wi-Fi because it doesn't make sense. Their routes aren't long enough because, you really, again, look at the reasoning for this Learning Without Limits initiative that former FCC Chair Jessica Rosenworcel developed a couple years ago, and it turned into E-rate and school bus Wi-Fi as an allowable funding mechanism. That the rural kids who don't have that access, like I mentioned before, or the low income disadvantaged that don't, certainly the latter, that could be more in a more urban landscape. We saw during COVID-19 that school buses were out there, providing internet in communities. That's not what this is for. This is for the ride. So we saw that emergency connectivity fund that was widely popular. That really, I think, was the impetus for this. I think FCC looked at that the current or the board at that time. It was a Democrat-led board under the Biden administration. I think they saw that this was the next logical step, and we know that school bus Wi-Fi and trying to get it in E-rate, that's been a movement in Congress ever since the Telecommunications Act in 1996. When E-rate was started, there has been legislative efforts to try to get that in there. And I think that they saw that the time was right, especially, like I mentioned, after the Emergency Connectivity Fund success during COVID. But again, it needs to make sense. And I think a lot of districts, if they look at it and say, well, we don't have the number of students in disadvantaged neighborhoods that we would need, or we don't have the long enough routes that it would really make sense. And that's kept people on the fence or decidedly saying no. But to your point on, just getting your feet wet with it, it reminded me of the story of Farmington Municipal Public Schools in New Mexico. Our good friend Billy Hewish, who's the transportation director out there, they got in front of Wi-Fi and said, hey, this is the best thing for our kids. They have very long routes out there in New Mexico, taking kids to Native American reservations, these long, sports activity trips, and some of their routes can be an hour plus. So before E-rate came along and said, hey, we can fund school bus Wi-Fi, they decided it was the best thing to do for the students. And they implemented that, and they budgeted for it. They made sure that they had it in the general fund, that they could fund this program going forward. So then when E-rate came along, sure, why not? Let's go in and get it. But they have a plan that if school bus Wi-Fi is rolled out of E-rate, that they can move forward. So again, I think whatever that technology or whatever that widget, whatever that shiny new object is that you're interested in, and again, I think that's great, Tony. You look at it, the first question should be, how does this benefit the students? We always talk about that. Too often, I think that conversation is only at TSD conference when we're talking about transporting students with disabilities, but it's for all students. So I think that if the industry is trying to ground whatever decision they're making with how does this first impact the students, I think that's a very good thing, and it's a noble thing, and what needs to be the priority.
Yeah, because inevitably it's operational. Like everybody's under these budgetary constraints and they're under this kind of microscope from administration that, hey, look, I need you to be on budget, under budget. I'm cutting your budget, right? And you're like, I'm trying to just operate to provide the basic function of getting kids to and from school safely. Now, when you talk about green energy, right? We're talking, there are health benefits to the children, right? What is that long term? It's almost immeasurable in a way because it doesn't affect the operations daily life, right? If that kid has issues later downstream, it doesn't necessarily affect the school district. It doesn't affect, there's no really punitive repercussion. There's no benefit per se, but we know as good human beings, hey, offering this is going to make a child's life better. Maybe their quality of life is better. There could be a lot of things here that play into these decisions, but the bigger conversation becomes more of the narrative about how much does the fuel cost? How much does it affect my budget? You got to talk about the benefits to the students and to the communities. And really that's the means to the end because, the dollars make sense and maybe the dollars don't make sense in some situations. Or, like you said, maybe the route is too short. The Wi-Fi in that person's opinion, and that's an opinion, right? It's not fact. A short route doesn't necessarily mean that the student won't use the free Wi-Fi. It's that person's perception.
Could they still get some homework done in 15 minutes? Absolutely.
They could.
And we know that the big push against this is the belief by a lot of folks that kids are, accessing TikTok. In fact, that's what Senator Ted Cruz says. He calls it, funding school buses so students can get on TikTok. That's not the case. We know that with the different providers, they have these networks locked down. They have really detailed reporting showing what student, when, and where they're trying to access these sites. They're being blocked. They're seeing the behavior change. Billy Hewish, I mentioned again, down in Farmington, New Mexico, talks about, hey, they have concrete evidence that shows that these students, they realize they can't access these sites they shouldn't be on, and they just stop because they know what's the point, and then they start using it for educational purposes. And he's told me, he said, hey, I'd love to invite Senator Cruz over here and I'll show him the data. I'll show him how it works. And I said, well, unfortunately, you're not in Texas. Maybe he'd take you up on that offer if you were in his state, but you're not. But certainly those stories need to get out more. And, the IT at the school districts, they play a huge role in this. The school networks are pretty locked down. They're working in concert with all these other providers. So really the aspect of kids using these for nefarious reasons really doesn't hold its water. I think it comes down to just funding. We know that the current administration, they're hawks. They're looking to cut anything and everything they can. And I think that, it comes down to the almighty dollar.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Well, it's going to be hot topics coming up at ST and Expo West in Reno. That's July 11th through the 16th, guys. Don't forget, sign up today, lock in that early bird rate, save 20% on your registration until June 6th. Yes, June 6th. That's not far away. We're about 2 months out from the conference or so. So you're going to blink and it'll be here. The hotel room block is nearly sold out. So don't wait. Go grab a room. Come out to Reno and and join us. We got the Bus Technology Summit, the Green Bus Summit, Transportation Director Summit. Ryan's got a ton of different classes he's curating within our agenda around maintenance, special needs, operations. There's just a lot there to take in, guys. And we've got some great keynotes as well, hitting on leadership, developing your leaders, doing some special needs training. We've got a couple of partners doing wheelchair securement trainings. So there's just a ton there for you guys to take full advantage of this summer at STN Expo. We'd love to see you out there in Reno. So make sure to go to stnexpo.com/west to learn more about everything that we're doing. In just a little bit, we've got a special guest coming on the webinar. Yes, Taylor Ekbatani is going to be on, and she's also going to be talking with Chris Ellison, the Director of Transportation and Fleet Services, Reynolds School District in Oregon. Yeah, he's a good friend of STN, and definitely always see him at STN Expo. So looking forward to that. So want to hear what they have to say in their conversation. But before we hear that, we got a quick message. Are you part of a top transportation team? If you said yes, I invite you to apply today for this special awards program at toptransportationteams.com. Our friends at TransFinder launched the Top Transportation Teams program about 3 years ago in collaboration with STN Expo. It provides the opportunity to get your team the recognition they deserve. Why enroll? It's a great team building exercise, and you will learn from other school districts and private school bus contractors about how to become even better team than you are today. 6 winners and an honorable mention from across North America will be announced at STN Expo West this summer. You'll receive complimentary full conference registration, accommodations, and a ton of media attention. You don't have to be a TransFinder client either, though I'm sure you'd love to be. School districts and contractors are encouraged to enroll. Visit toptransportationteams.com. Get started today. That's toptransportationteams.com.
Hello, nation. It is me. I guess people don't know me. Maybe they do. Taylor Ekbatani here. I am with Chris Ellison, the Director of Transportation and Fleet Services for Reynolds School District in Oregon. He is our guest this week. So welcome, Chris, to the podcast.
Well, thank you very much, Taylor. Pleasure to be here.
And a returning guest, we must say. So you were on, I think it was like 2 years ago, on site at STN Expo. So it's a little different now. We're looking through a computer screen.
Absolutely. I guess it's the day and age.
Yeah, exactly.
I prefer to be in person, but this is good too.
Yeah, I think we all prefer to be in person.
Yeah.
But great to have you on. So
Thank you.
I was talking last week with Ryan and Tony about NCST. On the podcast, we had David Johnson, the executive director of the IPTA, but everything was still like jumbled in my brain, right? Like 2 days I was out from the conference, and it's a lot to digest. But this was your third National Congress on Student Transportation. So you're used to it, or what? What were your kind of thoughts?
Well, I don't think anybody can ever get used to the National Congress on school transportation. It's a lot of fun, and I look forward to it. And I think I speak for everybody that are delegates. We're incredibly honored to do the work of providing a best practices publication for school bus professionals all across the nation, and having a number of states adopt that publication as their state specification verbatim. So it's a really, really important work that we do. And everybody in that room, you could just feel the passion, the passion of what we do. And it's just a really, really cool thing. So, we try to prepare ourselves, but we really don't know what we're stepping our feet into until we get to the Congress and the proposals start flowing. You just don't know how states are going to, react to these proposals, either in support or in opposition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they sent out, the proposals, I think it was like a week before, right? And that's a lot to go through and understand, and it's a lot.
It is. It's a lot to digest. It is an incredible amount of work. Everybody knows every state. We hope to have every state represented. My understanding that was that 48 states were represented at the Congress, which I believe is an incredible turnout and great representation. But it's an incredible amount of information to digest in a short period of time, and thinking, how is this particular proposal going to affect our state, be it Alabama, Alaska, Oregon, Washington, wherever, So it's a lot of fun though.
Yeah. Being at 2010 and then 2015, obviously COVID hit, so there was no 2020. So it's been 10 years since the last one. What were you kind of expecting? But then also like maybe what were some differences that you're like, whoa, that, was totally new?
Well, I was expecting the passion, just feeling the passion in the room, spirited discussions, and I use spirited kind of lightly, because there's a lot of chatter that happens, when a proposal is presented. You get the kind of the groans or the eye rolls or the claps, yes, I'm in agreement with that. And then you can speak in opposition or in support of whatever it was. So, I was expecting that. What I was not expecting was two things. Number one, how quickly we ended. It was, not even, well, it was about 2 full days, but, scheduled to go 2.5 days. And in 2010 and 2015, we used every bit of that time up. So that was a surprise. And then also the other surprise was how many new delegates there were. It was better than 70% maybe of all the delegates were new to the process, new to NCST, versus 2010, 2015. I would say it was the opposite. About 30% maybe were brand new. So, I understand with a 10-year gap, there's a lot of turnover. And I think in this day and age, post-COVID, some of our school bus transportation professionals, they were done, they were done. And I can, that's true across all industries too. So, obviously COVID didn't do us any favors, but we got the work done. And that's the most important thing with NCST.
Mm-hmm. And, it was 10 years. So that has a lot to do with it, right? And so I know that there was a question out to the delegates on, should it still be 5 years? Should it be 2 years? Should it be 3 years? What are your kind of thoughts on that, having been to 3 now?
So 5 years, 5 years, me personally, I think it's kind of a sweet spot. I'd be intrigued with maybe a 3-year option. But, if we're looking at like an every other year, being a committee writing chair this year, there's a lot of work that writing chairs and that have to do. And thinking about all the work that for the school bus specifications, the inspections groups, that's a ton of work. And my fear would be if we go to every other year, there'd be a constant work on this. So, I guess my question would be, where does that leave time for, your 9-to-5 job, or in our case, 6-to-5 job, or whatever it is, so I like tradition. I understand it was 10 years. There was a ton of work to get caught up. But on the other hand, we finished early too. So.
Mm-hmm. And so you mentioned, so you were a chair of the Emerging Technologies Committee, and that was a new committee, right? So that hasn't been there before. Was that going to be in 2020?
So my understanding was this is kind of an offshoot of the Chronicling Innovations in School Transportation, which was eliminated after 2015. So my understanding is, well, chronicling innovations in school transportation, there still needed to be a section. So it became emerging technologies in school transportation, which I think speaks to our industry more. And really, the inherent challenge of writing a brand new section of this is, getting the right people to the table that understand how are we going to create a blueprint for our school bus professionals, be it New York City public schools versus, Hood River County schools, a rural school district here in Oregon. It doesn't matter the size, but we need to create a blueprint for any school district or company or contractor that if they're looking for brand new cameras or if they're looking for GPS or any other type of maybe emerging technology, we could provide that best practices blueprint for them from start to end.
Yeah. Okay. And give us a little flavor into what it's like being on the committee, right? So I got all the emails from NASDIPS about, okay, this is your deadline for proposals. And then you guys take the proposals and then, work them into the book essentially, and then those get voted on. But what does it really mean being in this committee? What do you do?
Oh, it's a lot of work. I mean, it was much more work than I anticipated. And, I just need to send a huge shout out to number one, my vice chair, Marissa Weisinger, which I want to publicly say I am sorry for not introducing you at the table up there at the presentation. I felt horrible about it. But without my vice chair and the committee as a whole, this wouldn't have gotten done. We worked for the better part of a year putting this together, and it was bouncing ideas. Tim Ammon was awesome. Derek Graham. I mean, it was my job to select members of the writing committee that I felt would bring something to the table. And I believe we had 12, 13 members brought a ton to the table. So we had a mixture of vendors, industry partners, and large and small school districts. And Oregon Department of Education as well. So we had a great representation on the committee, and then trying to, just being tasked to bring something, create something that would benefit everybody nationwide. So it was a great process, bouncing ideas, creating a draft, sending it out, redlining it, tracking changes, checking in with NCST leadership as well. How are you doing on this? This is what we've got. Are you going to hit your deadline? Well, we're planning on it. And so, it's quite different creating a brand new document to be included versus being on a writing committee that is strictly dealing with proposed changes to what is already in the publication. And my utmost respect for Chris Jose for the school bus specifications. Man, that's a tough section there. So, and Brian Rue for the school bus inspections as well. In my opinion, those are probably the two toughest sections to get through and propose changes and accept or decline or reject. So kudos to those two gentlemen.
Yeah, it's got to be intimidating. You're sitting up there, everyone's kind of staring at you. You're like, okay, this is what I'm proposing to change. And then you see all the red or green paddles come up. I mean, it's not for the faint of heart, that's for sure.
It totally isn't. It is very intimidating because here you're presenting your committee's work on this. And, I'm fortunate that the two proposals, I only had two, did pass, but it's being able to kind of think on your feet because you have no idea what delegates are going to stand up and approach the mic and what questions they're going to ask. Are they going to be amendments to what you proposed, or are they just simply asking clarifying questions of what do you mean by this? What is the intent of this?
Yeah, I think it did go relatively smoothly. I think I have one question written down. Someone from Maryland, kind of noted, why put it in the specs? Why not have a document or a guide for emerging technologies? Because it is changing. And if they do meet every 5 years, I know I could see some concerns about having this inside the manual and living there for 5 years. Did you guys talk about that? Whether or not maybe it should be an ever-changing guide?
Well, we did. And when I was asked to be the writing chair of emerging technologies in school transportation, my first question was, what is an emerging technology today is old hat, in 3 months, until something, and then we're looking at every 5 years. So that kind of morphed into, okay, no, we will create a best practices section because emerging technology is subjective. Emerging technology can mean one thing to one school district versus something totally different at another school district. So there are school districts that they still do not, they have VHS video cameras in their buses, but a good majority of school districts have digital cameras. So how do they move from VHS to digital? This section will help them. So the question from Maryland, why include it in this publication? It's necessary because the whole publication is simply a best practices guideline to states. And it can go all the way down to a brand new supervisor, at a school district or a school bus location or a school bus contractor. It is everything in there is a best practices guideline.
I love that. Thank you for speaking on that. I think that's important. And I know some states, adopted in full. Where does Oregon kind of stand on that?
So Oregon does not adopt the publication in full. There are certain parts of the publication that Oregon does adopt, and they incorporate into their minimum school bus construction standards and in policy as well, state policy and statute. So yes.
Was there anything that stood out to you, like, oh, you thought this was going to be easy, and then when you were sitting there, you're like, oh my gosh, that's crazy that we're, having so much discussion about it?
No.
Putting you on the spot.
Well, put me on the spot. No, I think what took, and I believe I can speak for just about, 47 states. What took us by surprise was a proposal on the 15 passenger vans. And that created quite a spirited discussion, very, very passionate discussion. And that kind of came out of left field. And I don't believe anybody was really expecting a proposal to more or less, legalize the use of 15 passenger vans for student transportation. That particular subject was very, I'll just say, very passionate and very spirited. And that's the purpose of the NCST, having the Congress there. So what one state might think is okay, you've got other states that may have more practical experience, maybe some tragic experience that they can speak on. And it's just, that's the whole purpose of this Congress.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was talking to David about that last episode because that proposal came from Iowa, and really, really shocking. I know, someone stood up and was like, I've pulled dead bodies out of 15 passenger vans. Like that's,
Yes,
that's an image right there that
it
you
is.
picture. Yeah.
It is. And, I keep talking about passion, and I don't want to be a broken record, but that's what we do. And nobody in that room wants to be on national news or on, the front page of STN, because of a horrific, tragic accident that could have been prevented. There's a reason why 15 passenger vans are illegal in the United States. I mean, there's a great reason. And to have delegates stand up and highway patrol or state troopers, state patrol, get up and talk about the accidents that they've had to respond to. You're exactly right. It paints a picture, and a picture nobody wants to have. Absolutely.
Staying in that same kind of lane with the Alternative Transportation Committee, Ryan last week on the podcast was asking me about the DOT drug testing that was included in that in the proposal, and I had my notes open and I couldn't pull up the answer fast enough, right, for the recording. But I finally digested it, and I actually see that you spoke on that one. I was like, oh, that's perfect. Chris is going to be on next week. He can give us some insight into that.
I did speak in as an amendment, or offered a friendly amendment, but also in opposition for alternative transportation to have those drivers, such as, when we say alternative transportation, we're talking about taxi cabs, we're talking about cars, basically, and vans. Holding those drivers to the same DOT drug testing standard would be prohibitive to a lot of companies, such as taxi cab drivers. Personally, in my district, I do not use taxi cabs. We do not. I've got personal opinions on that. However, I do not speak on personal opinions at NCST. I speak for state. I'm speaking on behalf of Oregon. And with Oregon, there would need to be some sort of, there is regulation on what we call Type 10 drivers. If they are and when we say Type 10 drivers, in Oregon, that means a car or a minivan, something, a vehicle that is designed to not transport more than 10 passengers, which includes the driver, and is less than 10,000 pounds gross vehicle weight. So that would be your Suburbans, that would be your minivans, that would be your sedans, cars. So, for those districts that rely on alternative transportation, and now they're required to be included in a random drug screen pool to DOT standards, that could be prohibitive. And those companies may say, we can't service you anymore. Now, how are kids going to get to and from school if they're utilizing this alternative transportation because they can't provide yellow bus service? Mm-hmm. So those are the things that are going on in my head. And that's why I gave the proposed amendment, which did go through, it was passed, that they adhere to state or local policy regarding that.
Mm-hmm. As opposed to falling on the official Department of Transportation.
Exactly. Yes, absolutely. So, and again, these are simply guidelines or best practices. States can choose to adopt it, or they can choose not to as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that. When Ryan asked me about it, I was scrolling through my notes still. I was like, I'm still trying to catch up, but
I know you know what, when I can say when our first section came up, school bus specifications, I was just looking around the room because we were just bam, 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 proposal after proposal being accepted. And I'm like, wow, this is kind of a first. So in the back of my mind, I was wondering, is it because 75% of the delegates are brand new? They may not have known what to expect. And then once we kind of hit our groove with towards the end of the school bus specifications and into inspections, and, then more conversation happened at the microphones.
I kind of feel like that's what I was thinking too. It's kind of intimidating though. There's all these people in the room and you go up and speak to the microphone and like give your opinion. I'm sure that kind of threw a lot of people off, and especially with crossing arms going first, right? I think that one was the most controversial vote, but had no discussion about it.
I was shocked with that because in both 2010 and 2015, I actually spoke in opposition to it. Even though at my district that I was at, I order all of my buses with crossing arms on them. I do believe in them. However, I speak for the state of Oregon. When I got up and spoke in opposition to it in 2015, I said, Chris Ellison from Oregon. Oregon is speaking in opposition to this proposal for the following reasons. And basically, having a piece of equipment mandated on every school bus, basically, we are requiring a certain segment of school transportation to equip and maintain a piece of equipment that they will never use. And what I'm talking about are preschool operations, Head Start operations. So they do not, most Head Start operations I know of do not have crossing arms because we don't cross preschoolers, or we shouldn't cross preschoolers across the road. And then also because if that piece of equipment fails for whatever reason, they can't use the bus. The bus is down until that piece of equipment is fixed. So, a preschool or Head Start operation would be required to purchase, maintain a piece of equipment that in reality they would not be using. The second piece, is kind of tongue in cheek, but we train all of our students to cross at least 10 feet in front of our bus. That's state to state for safety. Last time I checked, these crossing arms aren't better than 6 feet, 5 to 6 feet long. So, kind of going against some training. And but again, that was kind of the tongue in cheek part. But the main reason was mandating a piece of equipment that not all school districts would be utilizing. Mm-hmm. So that was voted down in 2010 and 2015. And I think that caught everybody by surprise, but everybody, I shouldn't say everybody, the majority voted for it. Oregon did not vote for it, but we didn't have a chance to convene and have a chance to get up to speak in opposition to it. If that would have mattered, I don't know. Yeah.
I didn't know it was also talked about in 2010 and 2015. So that's interesting that it just kept coming back.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There are that one, the crossing arm generally is the one that I remember, the repeat, mm-hmm. The repeat item that came back, and it got passed. So I don't think we have to worry about it in 2030.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Chris, for jumping on the podcast. It's great to see you and hear your insight into it. I wonder if we'll see you in 5 years at the next one. What does that be, 2030? Oh my gosh, it would be.
I know, it seems so far away, but when you think 2030, it's crazy.
That is crazy. Well, yeah, thank you so much again. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much, Taylor, for the invitation. And it's great to see and hear you too. So thank you.
All right. Hey, special thanks to Chris, Taylor, Ryan Gray for coming on the episode and joining me for a great conversation about things happening out there in school transportation industry. Guys, this podcast is brought to you by TransFinder. We really appreciate them. Make sure and tell them you heard about them on the STN podcast. Don't forget, visit STN online for all the latest news and analysis on everything happening in the school transportation industry. And that STN Expo West, lock it in. Early bird registration, save 20% June 6th. Go to stnexpo.com/west to check out what we've got going on. The agenda is up, all the info you need, learn about our speakers. We got a great offering for you guys to learn more, to become sharper, better, improve your operation on a daily basis. You can subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to Pods Nation. Want to wish you guys a happy Memorial Day weekend. We'll be taking the week off, so we're normally here for you every week, Nation, but we need a break every once in a while too, so we're going to have a little lull in the action for the holiday, but hope you make it a safe one, and we'll see you next week.